Hello and welcome to another episode of the Monday Night Wars. It is November 20th, 1995, and we are live with Monday Night Nitro in Macon, Georgia at the Macon Coliseum. With me, as always, is Joseph the Bunghole Rojas. Joseph, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Scott. How are you?
I'm well, and just so you folks know, I didn't give Joseph that name. You did. As you know, we had an interactive poll to decide what Joseph's nickname would be, and you all picked Bunghole. I don't make the rules. You all voted in the poll. There was certainly nothing nefarious going on there, just like all of the polls we have during our watches for these programs. It was completely 100% legitimate. Right, Joseph?
1000%.
I'm glad you agree. Well, let's go on. We've got a match, Joseph, and what a match it is, because it's Scott Norton and the Shark, because we're still doing that. And Scott Norton defeats the Shark in a minute and 44 seconds. Of note, the Shark attacked Norton before the bell, but it doesn't matter, as I've already told you. Joseph, what do you think about this?
It's Scott the Flash Norton. So they've given him the nickname now. So that's something, I guess. Character development. I don't know. Shark, like you said, attacks him on the way to the ring. And I think Shark's face paint's pretty cool. The rest of his outfit, not so much. The match, you know that we both love both these guys. And number one, they've never really done anything storyline wise to make us care. And two, both times they've wrestled, it's been for like 2 minutes, so it's just hard to get into. I'm giving it a generous C minus.
Yeah, I mean, at under 2 minutes, feels like a squash match. Although I guess they did start before the bell rang, but it's still like this feud has been going on since September, I guess. I think September 11th is when this feud started. We're now into November 20th, and they just suddenly resurrected it after we really didn't do anything with it. And then we get this? I don't know, man. This isn't setting things off on the right track, which is unfortunate because we like Scott Norton and we like the Shark. Just didn't like them in this. After that, though, we got Gene Okerlund. We got Mean Gene. And he's interviewing Kevin Sullivan and Jimmy Hart. Hart tells Sting that Randy Savage has replaced him in Hulk's circle of friendship. He notes that Savage got to be on Baywatch. Sting didn't get to be on Baywatch. And Sullivan says Hulkamania is gonna end at World War III. Joseph, what do you think?
I love how you're saying Mean Gene, number one, right off the bat. And I know what you're doing, and we're not there yet, and I can't wait for it. That being said, this whole segment is not good. We've started off a very poor night so far of Nitro. This segment gets a D for me. I think you mentioned that Jimmy Hart said that Sting can beat Hulk Hogan because Jimmy Hart isn't at his side. I think that's a decent line. It's not too bad. Again, bringing up their personal history. Jimmy Hart says baby a lot. And again, you're a heel character now. I don't know what it is. Like, do something different than the same old shtick over and over. Kevin Sullivan, on the other hand, is somehow worse. I don't get this. I don't know how he's worse on the mic than Jimmy Hart is. He says World War III is going to snap. That's what he says. I don't know why. He also has no rhythm in this promo. He seems to be going all over the place, and I don't think he knows where he's going. I think he's just talking and just hoping that like the rest of him will catch up to what he's saying. And it never happens. But the redeeming part of this is when the promo ends, Mean Gene says two of the biggest pieces of human garbage that I can ever recall in regards to Jimmy Hart and Kevin Sullivan. And I'm not saying it in reality, they're pieces of garbage. I'm sure they're both very nice guys, but I liked the line from a character standpoint from Mean Gene. I thought that was pretty good. Overall, it gets a D for me.
Mean Gene was just saying what we were all feeling, and I can't fault him for that. After that, of note, I just thought I'd mention that there is a Hogan versus Sting match tonight. We mentioned that previously, that they set this match. And Bobby Heenan makes a joke saying that the Phantom of the Opera won't save Hogan tonight. And I thought that that was pretty funny after the whole graveyard mask sword promo debacle of last week.
One of my favorite things about Bobby Heenan is all his references are not for wrestling fans. Like they don't work for wrestling fans at all. That's a very specific reference. Whether you're talking about the musical version or the original version, it doesn't matter.
He's the brain. He's a learned man.
And it's beautiful, and I love it.
It's a great thing. Up next, though, we got another great thing. And this time I'm not being sarcastic because we got Eddie Guerrero and we got Brian Pillman in a match. That's a wonderful thing. But wait, this was supposed to be Eddie Guerrero versus Ric Flair. Well, Ric Flair's hurt, and he gives us a pre-match promo, and he says Guerrero's not on his level. He's going to let Brian Pillman take this one. Also of important note, Disco Inferno is here, Joseph, and he has a new CD.
I thought you forgot because it starts the segment, and I was like, this dude forgot Disco. We've escaped it.
No. I pulled a swerve on you. Disco's got a CD. He interrupts Eddie's entrance. It's a beautiful thing, Joseph. The match, though, Eddie Guerrero defeats Brian Pillman. 6 minutes, 27 seconds. Tell me more.
So as you rightly said, this match starts with Flair versus Pillman, and nothing else happens before that. Not a single thing. This is a weird one. This is really a weird one because you were right when you said that this is a great thing. It is a great match. This match is fantastic. The whole segment is going to get a B from me. I think the match is great. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's a match that I would watch any day of any week. It's so good. But
good catch.
There is a bit of disappointment because when I saw what the schedule was, and they mentioned that before this segment, they say, just so you know, coming up next, Eddie Guerrero versus Ric Flair. I lost my mind. I was ready to talk about that match. I was ecstatic, and then to find out that they're pulling a swerve, much like you did a second ago, that they're pulling a swerve, and we're getting Brian Pillman instead. It's a weird feeling because it's a letdown, but also like, all right, this is still good too. Like it's like when you got the store brand like Cocoa Puffs. It's like, all right, this is what I wanted, but it's still I'll still eat this. Like I'll still throw down on this right now. So I don't know. It's just kind of weird. That being said, it's a great match. I think Flair's character work to start this is fantastic. Talking about how it's a mistake for him to face Eddie. It's kind of beneath him, and Pillman's going to do it instead. Pillman's tights are the exact same tights that Chris Benoit is now wearing with the Four Horsemen. And I think that's a cool touch. It would honestly have been cool, and I don't think they're ever going to do this, if they became like a tag team. That'd be kind of cool, but we'll see what happens. I guess Pillman's probably done with tag teams. He probably doesn't want to do a tag team thing at this point in his career because he's done that for so long. And as much as, again, as I said, there was storyline disappointment with not having Flair in the match, it's still a great combo. And to me, I was thinking about this when I watched this, and I'm glad I took down this note. To me, this is the kind of match that at this point in 1995 separates WCW and WWF. When you're watching this, even the mid-carders feel important. Eddie feels important. Brian Pillman feels important. Chris Benoit, who I mentioned earlier, feels important. All these mid-card talent feel important, and we're still having a nice showing in this match instead. So no, we didn't get the Ric Flair, but this match still feels great. Guerrero hits the frog splash for the win. And when you think about what we saw last week, and I don't remember, we'll get to the lineup, but I don't want to spoil anything for WWF this week. But when you think about last week and the week prior for WWF 2 weeks in a row, we've had some of what is kind of their top mid-card talent wrestling nobodies, wrestling complete jobbers, quote unquote, local talent. And instead, WCW has somehow cracked the miraculous code that's, what if we have our mid-carders wrestle each other and see what happens? And it's so much more enjoyable to watch. It's a very fun match, fun segment, gets a B.
Yeah, I think the Ric Flair swerve is kind of interesting because I wonder if they did that. They're in Macon, Georgia, right? This is Ric Flair country. Did they lie to these people to get them to buy tickets?
Are you trying to tell me that Eric Bischoff has ever told a lie in his life?
I'm not saying he did. I just find it awfully suspicious that we are in Flair country. We bill a Flair promo, and Flair doesn't even seem to be here tonight. Seems like they knew in advance that he wasn't going to be wrestling this match. I'll just leave it at that. But I really don't have anything more to say about the match because it's an Eddie Guerrero Brian Pillman match. It was fun to watch. I have no complaints. I enjoy the cruiserweight division, although it's not really the cruiserweight division yet, but I enjoy what will become the cruiserweight division in WCW. It is always fun to watch. This is no exception. After the match, though, we have a WCW Saturday Night promo. Hopefully they don't give any important plot details in that, like they seem to like to do for some reason, because as Joseph noted, I don't think it's on Peacock. Some of it is, like a couple of years of it, but I don't think it is at this point. So we don't know, but we'll figure it out. If there are important plot details on Saturday night, we will find out and we will let you know. After that, though, we go back to last week and we see Savage, who was attacked by Shark and Lex Luger. Do you want to say anything more about that, Joseph? It's pretty straightforward, but I figure I'd give you the opportunity if you want.
I mean, it just feels like they're trying to write out Macho Man, which I think is a good call. It's not going to last, but I think that would have been fine if that's what they were doing.
Yeah, his arm is legitimately injured, and he's been wrestling on it for quite a while, and I think they're trying to give him some time off here, but we'll see how long that lasts. Up next, our match is the Road Warrior Hawk versus Big Bubba. Of note, Bubba pulls out a roll of quarters and a roll of tape, and he tapes the quarters to himself, but Hacksaw Jim Duggan comes out. He trips Bubba. Bubba lands on his own quarters. Hawk gets the cover. Road Warrior Hawk defeats Big Bubba in a 3-minute, 48-second match. And the most important thing about this, Joseph, the thing I want you to start this conversation off with is, why is there no Disco Inferno feud? We have Road Warrior Hawk. We have Disco Inferno. They had a thing going, and there's no feud. I am upset. Tell me more, Joseph.
Anyways, we're going to move on to the actual match. I have 3 notes for this match. Just 3. 1, Big Bubba hits a nice spine buster. And I don't know if you know this, Scott, but I like a good spine buster.
I've heard it.
2, obviously you mentioned the end of the match, how Big Bubba loses. But more importantly than just Hacksaw coming out, Hacksaw Jim Duggan comes out wearing Zubaz. And my 3rd note is, God bless the USA. Gets a C from me.
So it's going to get a B from me.
I wonder why. I wonder why it's getting a B.
And it's going to get a B for 3 simple words. Hacksaw Jim Duggan. The man can do no wrong in my eyes, and he did no wrong here tonight. And for that, it gets a B.
Well, remember, I'm resetting my C. I'm trying to make my C not a negative. It's a good thing to get a C. It's still quality. But I know you, it has to be a B or higher.
Yeah, but it gets a B. Like, that's fine, whatever you want to do. But Hacksaw Jim Duggan was there, so it's going to get a B. After that, we go into our main event, Joseph. We are rolling through this one because there's just not a whole lot going on, actually. We have the main event. We have the Hulkster, Hulk Hogan, with Randy Savage versus Sting. Savage distracts Sting as Sting's coming out of the entrance, and Hulk Hogan comes in from the crowd. But he doesn't attack, okay? Sting, of note, is in the red and yellow. Hogan is in black. Heenan says Sting is doing some psychological warfare here, but Bischoff claims Sting is wearing Hogan colors to bring Hogan back from the dark side. Hogan hulks out of the Scorpion Deathlock. The match ultimately ends in a no contest when the Dungeon of Doom does what it does and runs in. Joseph, tell me more about this one.
There's actually a lot to say about this. At least I thought there was a lot to say because my notes are just insane on this. I don't know what was going on. So number 1, let's start with what Sting is wearing, because it's got to be the highest rated segment of all of our shows is when I grade people's outfits. I would assume. You mentioned it. He's wearing Stinger red and yellow, complete with sparkly jacket and tassels. It gets an A+. It's gorgeous. And then you mentioned how Macho comes out. He's in a sling, which is nice because he needs to protect himself and heal his friggin' arm. I know that when people are taped up in wrestling, it's usually to pretend to not be, or to pretend to be injured when they're really not. He's clearly got a screwed up arm. He's had a screwed up arm for a long time. He will have the arm bandage on for a lot longer than we're even at. So just be prepared for that. But Hogan doesn't come out like you mentioned. He doesn't come out. Instead, he comes in from behind. And I actually got really excited when I saw this because I went, wow, they're finally going to do it. He's finally going to do a dark thing. But you know what? Hogan is just too good of a guy to attack Sting from behind. So instead, he lets him know he's there. It's another Hogan is Don Corleone, Hulk Hogan angle that falls short because Hogan refuses at this point to not be Hogan. But there's some interesting things in the actual match. At one point, Sting hits a really nice drop kick. And then Eric Bischoff says Sting has the vertical leap that half the guys in the NBA wish they had. I thought that was a really nice line. It's a good job from Bischoff. Hogan does a back rake, so maybe he's a bad guy kind of thing. I don't know. Then Heenan says to Bischoff, if this is bothering you, then take some Pepto and go home and go to bed. I thought that was hilarious. And then there's a nice exchange between Mongo and Heenan. So Mongo actually kind of comes back a little bit in this one. I mentioned last week he's starting to struggle. And Mongo says, me and my brother sometimes have to settle things like this. And then Heenan says, yeah, but he's 9. And I laughed out loud. Heenan's killing it right now. He's doing a great job. At one point for Hogan, I've spoken pretty negatively of him, so let's give him some positive vibes. Hogan hits a really nice suplex. And I'm not being patronizing when I say that. The standard suplex is one of the very first wrestling moves that a lot of people learn. So it gets very wrongly overshadowed because it seems to be a simplistic move. But when done well, it's really nice. And he does a very good job with this one. It's really nice. It's very clean. It's got nice lift. It's not like Chris Benoit's snap suplex. It's got a lot of, energy behind it. It's just a very nice, smooth transition. I like it a lot. I really am. I'm trying to be very clear. I'm not patronizing. I think it's a fantastic move that he does. Then Hogan misses his leg drop. I thought for sure the match was going to be over, but he misses his leg drop. And then lo and behold, Sting hits the Scorpion Deathlock on Hogan, which I thought was incredibly surprising. And then Hogan screams into the camera, he's going to break my leg. More positivity towards Hulk Hogan. As much as there's a lot of negative things to say about him, about his character, about different things, stories that have come out over the years, when we're talking about his in-ring ability, Hogan is probably the best I've ever seen in my life at camera awareness. If there is a camera to be had, he will find it and he will make sure everything that he's doing is directed into it. So when he screams, he's going to break my leg, that is incredibly intentional. And I thought it did a great kind of add on to this segment. And then Dungeon of Doom attacks Sting, which makes no sense to me because weren't they just teasing that maybe Sting was joining Dungeon of Doom? And then Sting and Hogan fight him off. And then Giant gets ready to double choke slam both men. And at this point, I'm out of the segment. I'm back to not liking it. But Macho Man, he seems to be faking, not really faking, he's actually hurt, but faking his injury. And he slams the Giant with the chair, hits him straight over the back. And then Macho gets chokeslammed, because of course he does, for some reason. And then Sting and Hogan slam Giant out with the chair together. And now all 3 men are unified. And it gets a B- for me. I actually thought it was thoroughly entertaining the whole way through.
I liked the whole thing. I guess I wouldn't say it was the highlight necessarily of the night. I did like the Eddie Guerrero Brian Pillman match, but I guess when you consider that this was an entertaining match, but also continued a story, I thought that was pretty good. I mean, unless you consider Disco Inferno's got new CDs as progressing a story, which, maybe it does. And maybe the Eddie Guerrero Brian Pillman match is superior. But putting that aside, Joseph, for a minute, which I know you don't want to, because I know you want to keep talking about that. It was a good match. I liked the back and forth. You're right. I thought Sting is here, isn't he? Well, I guess he's not. I guess he's not in the Dungeon of Doom. I guess he's back on Team Hogan. Thank goodness. It was fun. I didn't like that Hogan hulked out of the Scorpion Deathlock. The fans didn't really like it either. The fans were clearly not on Hogan's side. They were very much on Team Sting, which I
As
found
they should
interesting.
be.
Yeah.
As they should be. But
I didn't like the dungeon run-in. I'm getting tired of it.
you're 100% right on that. The Dungeon of Doom run-ins, they need to stop, and unfortunately, we've got plenty more.
It's like every other week.
Yeah.
Well, and I remember listening to Eric Bischoff talk about this, and he talks about how they invited wrestling fans for a survey or something and asked them what they like about wrestling. And what they found was that people like these run-ins and these pull-aparts and that kind of stuff. So you see that a lot. They do that a lot on WCW because fans told them they liked it. And I get it. You're trying to give the fans what they want, but it's the same. Like, it's like every other week. I'm getting tired of it. When we first started, we were kind of like, the dungeon. But then we were actually, as we watched it, we're like, it's not bad. It serves a purpose. We understand what the purpose is here. It's fine. It's overstayed. It's welcome. And I'm getting tired of it. We need something fresh. We need something new in WCW.
Whoa.
But that's it. That's it for WCW for the night, right? They're once again, Team Hulkamania, not looking good for them. Anything more you want to add before we move on?
No, I think the show overall got a C+ for me. It was a fine show, but it wasn't. It has not been the most amazing show we've seen by far.
Yeah, it was okay, but certainly not the best WCW. After that, though, we got Raw. We got WWF Raw, November 20th, 1995. And Joseph, here's some big news. We are not in Brandon, Manitoba, Canada. We're somewhere new. We're in the Richmond Coliseum in Richmond, Virginia.
That's huge. You know what else is huge?
What?
The capacity of the Richmond Coliseum, which is 13,553. But you know it's not huge?
I have a feeling I know, but why don't you tell me?
The attendance, which is 4,500.
Okay.
So that's a lot. That's a lot of missing seats.
In Richmond, which I would think is probably a wrestling, the South. Virginia's the South. Richmond's the South. You think that's a wrestling area, but maybe it's not.
It's a wrestling area, but that Flair territory, boy.
That's true. This is not Vince McMahon and his New England wrestling territory. But we open with a stills package. I learned that's what they call it. I learned they call it a stills package. I've been doing some research. And what that means is it's just a bunch of photos. And WWF does this quite a bit, we've noticed, where they just show photos, different photos of the pay-per-view. We had Survivor Series last night, and we get a stills package of a bunch of photos from the main event. Vince and Jerry talk about it. They talk about how Mr. Perfect made his return. Lawler also says his head still hurts from the tombstone he got from Taker. We also look back at 1-2-3 Kid. He joined the corporation. He's a heel now. That resulted in Sid helping Kid win a Survivor Series match, and Kid helped Sid win a Survivor Series match against Razor. Pretty wild. What do you think, Joseph?
It's interesting that you were talking about the stills package, because this is something I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I feel like I've at least talked about it with you, like at least personally. This is something that WWF does forever. I don't know if they still do it, but I remember like as a kid, and my favorite kind of era is the era that directly precedes this, which is the Ruthless Aggression era. They did all through that, and I remember them doing it continuously for a long time. And I think the idea is, if you really want to see the action, you have to go buy the pay-per-view, because usually pay-per-views weren't just a day. Like, that's kind of a misconception. Like, pay-per-views were the day of, obviously they were the time, but then usually they do replays for a while. So you could still get more buys on the pay-per-view if people bought it later on. Like, oh, that was the match, I got to go back and watch that. And so that usually a few days of the pay-per-view would kind of exist. WCW, on the other hand, they'll just straight up show you what happened. And I gotta be honest, I think WCW's wrong in that. WWF is like, if you want to see this, you got to go buy it. Now, obviously, WWF really isn't giving us a lot of reason to buy it in the first place. But if I'm watching WCW, I could just wait the next day and then find out if I want to buy it based off of what I saw.
You're right. WCW shows us the entire match. And often not the best matches. They make us suffer through 10 minutes of the match from last night. It's like, why are we doing this? especially for us because we just watched it most likely. So I think you're right. I think WCW is wrong in this. I think WWF is right. I think these teases are good. And also they sell their encore. They do encores, so they're trying to hype you like, oh, if you didn't catch it, here's all the great things you missed. And by the way, we have an encore pay-per-view coming up, which they do hype in this show. So I think it makes more sense. I think you're right. I think WWF does it better. Our first match of the night, though, is the 1-2-3 Kid versus Hakushi. We get a Razor phone call. Very exciting. Marty Jannetty attempts a run-in. Doesn't work out. And Ted DiBiase shoves Hakushi off the top rope, which allows 1-2-3 Kid to defeat Hakushi. After the match, though, DiBiase brags to Jerry the King Lawler about his quote-unquote new investment. Jannetty again tries to interfere, but he gets powerbombed by Sid. What do you make of all this, Joseph?
So I'll talk about the match first. I think the match is actually a lot of fun. It got a B- for me. The match is a lot of really kind of high action. Both men are very, very quick. They're very gifted in the ring. I think this is a nice match for kind of an opener of 1-2-3 Kid's new journey as a villain. And he gets put over, and as he should. This is exactly what should happen. I do kind of feel a little bad for Hakushi because it's, what's going on with him. I feel like he's kind of directionless at this point, but it does a good job. And I think Hakushi does a great job putting him over. I like how he wins. He wins by cheating, being a 1-2-3 Kid. I like that. That I think is what should happen because he's not the most imposing guy. So, trickery and cheating and things like that, I'm totally fine with. So the match gets a B, or B- rather. But then there's the segment you mentioned afterwards, which is the Jerry Lawler interviewing Ted DiBiase and Kid. And I'm so confused by this because I mean, are Kid and Jannetty a feud? Like, are they a feud? I don't really recall that. And then Sid threatens Jannetty instead. Then he beats him up. Then he hits him with a power bomb. I'm kind of confused as to what's going on here. And I thought it was like, it got a C for me. I was just a little bit like, I don't remember this being a thing. I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember this being a thing at all.
Not that I'm aware of. So yeah, I don't know. The match itself, again, I think it's one of your C's, as you might call it. Did you give it a C? Did I miss that part?
I gave it a B-, so just a little bit higher than a C, because I thought it was important to push 1-2-3 Kid because you just turned him heel.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. I thought the match was okay. I don't get the Jannetty stuff, I guess maybe because of Survivor Series. That's why we have this problem, and it seems like Jannetty's now he was on the same team with Hakushi, I guess, and Barry Horowitz. So are they a faction now? The underdogs? I don't know. It is what it is. After that, though, we go to Doc Hendricks for an In Your House preview because we were already hyping our next pay-per-view because WWF is very good at hyping pay-per-views, and we got one every month now. 1995, I believe, is the first year they did a pay-per-view every month, right, Joseph?
Yeah, because of the In Your House pay-per-views, they were doing it in direct competition with WCW, who had started to do monthly pay-per-views. And so what their tactic was, and I think I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again because it's been enough time. Their tactic was basically, we'll do this In Your House pay-per-view, and instead of it being, I believe, $29.99, it'll only be $19.99. And instead of it being 3 hours long, it'll be 2 hours long. So it's a little bit more of it's a bit of a drop in price, so that way people can spend their money and not have to feel like they're having to pay the full price every month, but also because that you do get a little bit less of a pay-per-view. I thought it was a good tactic.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea. They point out that we're going to get Bret Hart and Bulldog for the title, but more importantly, we also have Henry Godwinn and Hunter Hearst Helmsley in an Arkansas hog pen match. Joseph, I heard your mic click on. You've got thoughts. Go.
I do have thoughts. Number one, British Bulldog cuts a very mundane promo, and I'm just going to skip past that. I just need to mention it. Number two, if you just heard what Scott said about Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Henry Godwinn, you might be thinking to yourself, this is an eye roll. And I was right there with you, but we've watched this, and I think you're going to be surprised what we say about it, because I think it's not nearly as bad as either of us expected it to be. But most importantly, Doc Hendricks is wearing a gorgeously comfy looking sweater. And I got to say, 1990s sweaters are the best sweaters of all time.
Wow. The 1990s apparently were just a time to be alive. Up next, though, we have Diesel. He's backstage. He's speaking to Shawn Michaels. Very interesting. And Joseph, you can get jackets of The Undertaker, of Shawn Michaels, of Diesel, of Bret Hart. And they are only $59.75.
I think I would not spend my money on this.
You don't want a Shawn Michaels jacket?
I mean, I kind of do, but that's even today, that's a lot of money.
$60 for a jacket for a Shawn Michaels jacket?
I don't know if I want to pay that.
Wow. I'm shocked. And a little disgusted.
I'm really sorry that I did that to you.
Yeah. I need a palate cleanse. So let's go to our next match to cleanse my palate. Because we got Skip and we got Savio Vega. Of important note, we're told that Bob Backlund is campaigning in the crowd. And ultimately, though, the match ends in a no contest because Diesel wants to talk. He interferes and ends the match. I'll go right into it because that's kind of the point, right? The point of this match is for Diesel to interfere because he's got something to say and he just wants this match over so he can say what he wants to say. I actually kind of like that. Diesel says he thought about apologizing for beating Bret Hart, giving him 2 jackknife power bombs at Survivor Series. But for the first time in a year, he says he slept like a baby and he woke up with a smile on his face. Big Daddy Cool is back. And he's only looking out for his friends and his family. And Shawn Michaels is one of those. What do you think, Joseph?
I think that Diesel does kind of fumble all over himself quite a bit. We mentioned this last week where they had the promo where it was really more of an interview, right? And Diesel was able to kind of just be calm and collected. And he does so well in that. But when he starts getting like this, and we see it with Ahmed Johnson too, and a number of wrestlers, it's really hard unless you really know what you're going to go say. And I think he does know what he's going to go say, but it's still really hard to bring that much energy into your speech. I mean, you and I often in doing this will fumble around and we're not even screaming. So just think about how difficult it is to cut a promo. So he does fumble over himself a little bit, but the message I like a lot. I like what he's saying. I like the direction he's going. One thing he does say is he's talking about what he's going to be and what he's not going to be. And he says, not as some corporate puppet you tried to create, Vince. And you can kind of see in that line and some of the other lines that he stated, he's clearly on his way out of the company. Like you can tell he's made that decision. I'm sure that Vince was probably like, oh, that's a great line. That's fantastic. Go ahead and say it. But he actually, I'm pretty sure Kevin Nash is like, or Diesel rather, is like, I'm ready to go. I think I'm done here. Overall, it gets a C because it does fumble over himself. I would have still liked to see the match, but I do agree with you that it was a cool idea to have him come out and interrupt it. It's just not quite as emphatic as I think it could have been. Also, they pipe in a lot of crowd noise too for it, so I really don't know how the crowd felt. And I mean, there's so few people in the audience in comparison to the arena size they're in that I can't imagine it got a huge pop.
I agree. I like the premise. I like that he broke up the match. I thought that was clever because, like, I don't care about you two are nothing to me. I don't care about you. I want to talk, so we're done with this. I like that idea. You're right. Not a great Diesel promo. Kevin Nash, not the best on the mic. Well, Kevin Nash is kind of hot or cold, I feel like. Either Kevin Nash is just fantastic or he's not good at all. You get one or the other, and this was not good. I do think you're right. He's shooting. He's done. He's clearly done, which is very interesting. But I also find is this a Diesel heel turn? Because it seems like it's supposed to be a heel turn, but he's still got Shawn Michaels back, and Shawn Michaels is a good guy. Is this a tweener Diesel, as they say in wrestling jargon, or is he a heel, Joseph?
I don't think tweener is wrestler jargon. I think it's just jargon. It's difficult to say because I think this is just unfortunately 1995 booking. Like, well, we're going to make him kind of a bad guy, which I think they should have, by the way. If you already did it, and I was very public in our podcast episode to say I think it was a mistake to make him heel, and I still stand by that. I think they should have made Bret the heel. But if you're going to do it, then do it and go all the way with it. The anti-hero thing has to come naturally. You can't force it. You cannot force someone to be an anti-hero. It'll never work. It has to be a natural progression that the performer makes. And the way that works is you're very clearly a heel, but your tactics and your performance and the way you conduct yourself are so good, even though you're a heel, the crowd is getting behind you. That's how you make an anti-hero. You cannot force an anti-hero to work, and they're doing that right here. And to your point, the Shawn Michaels stuff, I think they should have just done with that. I think they should have been arguing backstage. I think that's what should have happened. They should have been arguing, and he should have come out and said, I know that we're friends, but I'm doing this. And regardless of how you feel, I'm doing it. And then you could have slowly led to a rivalry between them two because they've done it before and it works. They have great chemistry and they're going to do it again. Spoilers. It's like, where is this? Why aren't we going a full direction? Where is this going? It just kind of feels a little flat. And again, it's just 1995 WWF. Like, it's just like, God, just pull the trigger.
Well, I guess my follow-up question to you is, wasn't he already an anti-hero? Or was he a straight up face? Like, I always felt he was kind of an anti-hero.
I could see that through the lens of now, especially because of what we know about Kevin Nash later on. I think Razor's an anti-hero because Razor Ramon is the bad guy. But there is a moment about a year prior to this, maybe a little bit longer, because Shawn Michaels was a straight up heel, and Diesel was the villain. Was his bodyguard villain, and so he was absolutely a heel. And then he turned on Shawn Michaels and basically said no more. So he did go 100% face with that. He's still a cool character, so maybe that's why we kind of think of him as an anti-hero, but he's done nothing to make me think, like, because an anti-hero has to still be a villain. Like, they still have to do heel things. A great example is Eddie Guerrero, even though Eddie Guerrero is kind of over the top with it, right? With his lying and cheating and stealing. You have to still be willing to do the wrong thing for the right reason. And Diesel's never done that. The minute he turned face, he was always making the right decision as far as I'm doing the right thing for the right reasons.
And there you have it. After that, we have an ad for the Survivor Series Encore pay-per-view. So see, I told you, man. They're selling their next pay-per-view. They're selling their last pay-per-view. WWF is selling. We also get some hype for next week. We've got Kama versus The Undertaker. Apparently, Kama's chain has been made from Undertaker's melted down urn, and it's on the line. And, Joseph, I know you and I are both excited. Brother Love returns to interview Bret Hart.
Let's not put a downer on this night. Let's just keep going.
Next week, everybody. After that, we have our main event. Owen Hart and Shawn Michaels. This one's interesting, Joseph, because of the way it ends. It's a no contest, and it's a no contest because Shawn Michaels collapses in the ring. If you don't remember, Shawn Michaels had a real-life concussion that they played into a couple of weeks ago. They've been playing that up. This is, I think, supposed to be that he's still having problems. He's not really injured. This is fake, although he does go away for a while after this, if I recall. So maybe he isn't completely good to go yet, but that's how it ends. So Joseph, why don't you break down the match, and then we'll go into the aftermath, which the crowd is quite stunned by the whole thing.
Honestly, there's not a whole lot to go into in the match. I think this is one of those segments where, every once in a while, the weeks that we'll have are just kind of like, we're going to tell you guys and you really don't need to watch it. I think this is a good one to watch because I think everybody kind of has to formulate their own opinion on it. I think my opinion on this is probably not in the majority, and we'll kind of get into that in a bit. But the match itself is really good. But leading up to that moment, that post-match moment, these two men have phenomenal chemistry. And they just continue it, right? They just continue showing that here. HBK is wearing essentially the same outfit from Survivor Series, except for this time he's got black tights on instead. So it gets a B because it's basically the same. But the match is good. It's a really good match. And then there's the moment, and I'll kind of describe it, but it's one of those things you kind of have to watch where HBK throws out Owen Hart and he starts celebrating, and all of a sudden he starts grabbing his head and he just collapses in the ring. And I got to say, there's a reason the crowd is so shocked. Even though it's 1995 and even though we don't have the internet and stuff, well, I mean, we have the internet, but it's not the same. You don't have the internet to kind of go, is he actually hurt and all that stuff. He sells this so well. It even now knowing that he's not actually hurt, he's okay. Even knowing that, having that knowledge, it looks like he is absolutely just freaking gone. It's a great sell.
And it's not just a great sell by him, it's a great sell by really everyone. Like Owen looks genuinely concerned. He looks like something's wrong. Owen is selling it well. The announce table is selling it well. Everyone, is really doing a good job here. Almost, I was kind of fooled at the beginning. Like I thought he was actually hurt, or that his concussion was still causing problems. I know now that it's not true, although I wouldn't be surprised because, like I said, he does go away for a while, I feel, after this. So I'm wondering if this was a way for him to take some time off because he did wrestle quite a match at Survivor Series. This was a really good back and forth with Owen. Maybe he's still not 100% and he did need some time off. So they're just like, well, we'll just say it's still your concussion. Because he did get a beat down by these guys at this bar. So maybe he's not 100% and this is the way they figured it out. But it was well done. The fans are very quiet. They come back. He goes down. They're to a
crying. Break. There's fans crying.
People are, it's quiet. Medical staff is checking on him. Vince is in the ring. They're giving him oxygen. We go to another break. Like we're staying on this. Pat Patterson's there. He's asking Shawn if Shawn can hear him. Shawn's eyes are open. He just looks gone. As I said, even Owen seems to be shaken up. And that's it. They go to black. That's where they leave us. I thought it was really well done.
Yes, I wanted to talk about that because I mentioned that my opinion, and it seems like yours too, is kind of in the minority. I don't think people like this segment in general. I could be wrong. If you do like the segment, feel free to let us know. In today's day and age, if you did this segment, it would be incredibly taboo, and probably rightfully so. What people really do have to take into account is this is 1995, and at this point, we don't know about concussions and CTE the way we do now. There's been rumblings. There are doctors who are trying to get recognition to it at this time, but it is pretty much one of those things where they're kind of joked about. Oh, maybe you got a concussion. Ha ha ha. Like we don't look at them as such a negative thing that they are. We know now, and there's unfortunately a huge wrestling event that's going to kind of change the fabric of wrestling and how concussions are handled. And it's a very unfortunate event. And we'll get to it when we get to it. In the NFL, it's the same thing. Concussions. I mean, we literally had last year a player. I'm not trying to get all on a rant about it, but we had a player who had a concussion in one game. He was clearly dizzy and falling over. And his team brought him back the next game and he got another concussion. And it was so scary that it looked like he was going to die. Like it was that level scary. And somehow that team did not get slapped with 1 million fines because frankly, the NFL doesn't give a shit about its players. That's just the reality.
Don't sue us, Roger Goodell.
Do it. Fuck you, Roger Goodell.
God, we don't have NFL money. What are you doing? I'm cutting this. It's over. We're done with this. We're done with this night. Goodbye, everybody. Da, 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 da.
But like in 2023, the NFL still wasn't taking concussions seriously. So this is a difficult segment for people to accept nowadays. And I get that. But when you put yourself in 1995, this is a beautifully done segment. It's well acted. It's as you said, by everybody. There's a moment when Vince goes to the ring to look on him. This is starting to break down the kayfabe walls that Vince McMahon is just a color commentator. Diesel had a moment earlier too where he dropped Vince, a call on Vince as, I'm not going to be your puppet anymore. We don't talk about Vince as the owner a whole lot. We talk about him as the color commentator. We don't really talk about him as the owner and chairman of WWF. That's not a thing yet. And this is starting to break those walls down. And people are literally crying in the audience. They're stunned. There's people who are literally crying and screaming, "Please be okay, Shawn." This angle is fantastic. It is one of the most well done. It's to me, this is probably the best angle in WWF in 1995 that we have seen so far. It's that good.
And I guess I'm not even with people who are like, oh, they're making light of CTE or concussions because, yeah, he doesn't really have. I mean, he did have a concussion. He really did have one. And yeah, they're still selling that as if he does, or maybe they're making light of it, but I don't feel like they're making light of it. They're treating it like it's very serious. And that is unusual for 1995. It's unusual for now. People still don't act like concussions are that big of a deal. So the fact that WWF was treating a concussion as a serious medical ailment, maybe the way they handled it doesn't translate. It's a little in poor taste now, but I think the fact that they were even treating it as serious back then is kind of saying something. And I think it's fine. I get that maybe people didn't like that. Is he hurt or not? They don't like the fake that he's not really hurt. As I'm unconvinced that he's not actually hurt. I don't think the fall was real and all of that. But he does, if I recall, and I guess we'll see as we go on further, he does take some time off after this.
Yes, he does. A lot of time.
Yeah, he goes away for quite a while. And Owen Hart does this big thing about how I ended Shawn Michaels' career. It's a thing. So, I mean, I don't think he wouldn't be taking that much time off if he wasn't still dealing with something, right? Why would he be taking all this time off if he wasn't still experiencing some symptoms? Not necessarily of the concussion, but just he got quite the beat down. Maybe he wasn't completely healed. Maybe he needs some more time. Or maybe he really was. Maybe after his match at Survivor Series, he really was feeling a little dizzy or something and had some kind of concussion-like symptoms and said, I think I need to take some time. I thought it was handled well. I don't feel negative about it. I think they did a good job with it.
So I looked it up while you were talking about this, and he actually was hurt. He actually did come back too soon. I don't know necessarily if it was due to the concussion, but he actually was legitimately hurt and came back too soon. It's in his documentary, the Through Heartbreak and Triumph, which came out in 2007. It's a really fun documentary. Most WWE home video documentaries are WWE-ified, so there's a bit of grain of salt that sometimes you have to take with them, but they do talk about this. He did actually get hurt and he came back too soon. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just to get through Survivor Series, but yeah, he will be gone. He won't come back until 1996. As far as in-ring, they'll do things with him, but he won't be back for at least a month.
So there you go. Not a completely fake injury there. But that does it. Like I said, they go to black. That's how they end it. They ended on a cliffhanger like that. Pretty dramatic stuff for WWF in 1995. But who won the Monday Night Wars this week, Joseph? What are your thoughts?
So that segment in general got an A from me. I thought it was so well done. I think that is the segment of the week between both shows. I think that also puts it over WCW. I think WCW is kind of lackluster in general, and I think WWF had a really good showing here. I give it to WWF.
This is a tough one for me. I think this one is I could see it going both ways. I thought the Eddie Guerrero Brian Pillman match was good. I thought the Hogan Sting match was good, even if the finish was a dungeon run in and we're getting tired of that. I thought the 1-2-3 Kid Hakushi match was good. I thought the Owen Hart Shawn Michaels match was good. So I guess at the end, it really comes down to the storytelling. And there wasn't a ton of storytelling this week on Nitro. I mean, I guess there was, but it wasn't really in the matches so much as in between. The Owen Hart Shawn Michaels match, that was the story. We got the whole story right there. We also got a lot of story from the 1-2-3 Kid Hakushi match, even though Razor wasn't in it. We got Razor on the phone and all of that. I think you might be right. I think Raw might have won this. It's a squeaker though.
I'm not saying it's a landslide at all.
It's a 51-49 kind of thing for me.
Yeah.
But what did the fans think, Joseph? What are the ratings for tonight, November 20th, 1995?
The Nielsen for Raw this night was 2.3.
The rating for Nitro was 2.5. We gave it to Raw. The fans gave it to Nitro, but it is kind of a squeaker. It's pretty close.
It's a squeaker, but also we talked about this last week where we've been noticing a pattern based off of the show's performances. And I said last week that I would be shocked based off of how bad WWF was last week, and we did not like the show. I would be shocked if this show was a higher rating than WCW, because you're again, you can't record these things. You're not able to just jump back and forth that easy. So you're basically just going with who has the hot hand. And these kids are going to school and they're talking about what happened on the shows. And you're going to be hearing about this and going, wait, that happened on WCW? Man, I got to tune in next week. So we see WWF drop, which is exactly what I said I thought was going to happen. And now we have WCW raise a little bit because WCW had a banger show last week. They had a really fun show full of fun matches. So we're seeing that trend of if you have a really good show, you'll probably have a much better position the following week. I would be shocked to see, again, if WWF had a lower rating next week because you left on such a cliffhanger. People are going to want to tune in and find out.
And why don't we just leave it on that cliffhanger? Because you're going to have to tune in and find out next week. That's it for the Monday Night Wars. As always, I am Scott. With me is Joseph. Say goodbye, Joseph.
Goodbye, Joseph.
We hadn't done that one in a while, so I thought I'd hit it.
That's
good talking with you, man.
You too. Hey everybody, it's Joseph. Did you like this podcast? Well, we hope that you did, and also that you join us every Monday for new episodes. You can listen to us on Spotify, and soon we'll explore other platforms to bring you episodes of the Monday Night Wars. Did you listen to this podcast and think, pretty sure they're wrong about that? Well, let us know. You can email us at mnwpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's mnwpodcast@gmail.com. And correct anything we messed up. Don't worry, you won't bruise our egos. You can also give us suggestions, follow the show, or even just reach out to us on the following platforms. On Twitter, you can reach us at MON Night Wars Pod. Again, MON Night Wars Pod. And on Instagram and Facebook, you can reach us at Monday Night Wars Podcast. And finally, if you feel like supporting this podcast and also getting bonus content, you can follow us on Patreon at Monday Night Wars Podcast. For the low price of $2 a month, you get every episode of the Monday Night Wars and also every breakdown of every WCW and WWF pay-per-view during this era, with more content to come. Again, and one last time, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. We'll see you next Monday back here on the Monday Night Wars podcast.